Hey folks, Wes Boss here. I wanted to do a quick little video on Cloudflare Workers. This is kind of a cool thing. I've never looked into it myself, but I've been hearing about it. It's sort of in the serverless function sort of area, but the fact that it's called Cloudflare Workers and they work similar to service workers in JavaScript got me kind of interested. And I have this problem that I'm trying to solve, and I thought that it would be the perfect fit. So let me explain the problem first. And then let me dig into what Cloudflare Workers is, how it's similar to service workers, and then I'm going to show you the actual code that I wrote to solve my problem. So first thing is that I've got this app. I use this app called Cloudapp that is used for screenshots. So anytime I take a screenshot, it'll upload it to my Cloudapp, and it give me these little URLs that look like this. And I can send people to them, right? It works great. And I've been using it for, I don't know, like 14 years or 10 years, something silly like that. I think I've got like, I don't know, something like 8,000 screenshots uploaded to this thing and links and little videos. And I've just been using it absolutely forever. And it's a service that I use, but I pay extra to use my own domain name with them. Now, I've been using that forever. And one feature that they have is that you can simply just tack on /content or /content.jpg or really anything onto the end of these are called drops. You can tag that onto the end of the drop. And what it used to do is that it would just direct you to the raw JPEG or PNG or GIF or whatever was sort of hosted there. It would not give you the silly little website with like their HTML and JavaScript and all that on it. It would just give you the raw URL as if I were to go to it, copy paste the URL and visit it, sort of like that, right? So that was huge for me because I use that all the time when I'm building demos and I need to host something really quickly. I just did a quick search on GitHub and I searched for west.io, and I have 14,000 times on GitHub I've used it to embed little this is a Sublime extension I used that converted JavaScript to CoffeeScript. Like every single time I needed to host something, I wrote my entire Sublime textbook with that. And every time I go to a URL, let me go to this one, see what this is. It would show me a little screenshot. And I used to be able to tag /content onto the end, and it would just give you the raw one, and then I could use that as an image source, whatever. Now Cloudapp updated, and they just like totally goofed it up, and you can't use this anymore. It was like the main feature that I used, and they're like, "Oh, sorry about that. That's not part of the thing." And there's a handful of other issues. So I'm a little cheesed at Cloudapp for like sort of like pulling the rug from under me, and they just remove features without letting me know. And now I've got 14,000 broken images across the internet, which is which sucks. So let's learn how to fix it with Cloudflare Worker. So the sort of downside is that this west.io is not it's not my own server, right? Like I can't run code on it because all I have is I just bought the domain name and I just pointed it towards Cloudapp, and they control the logic as to what gets served up when somebody hits a URL. So Cloudflare Workers is very similar to service workers where you can sort of jump in between. So let me do a quick little rundown of what service workers is. Normally you have your visitor, or your request, let's call it a visitor, and then you have your server, right? And if a visitor requests dog.jpg, what happens is that request goes down to your server. Your server says, dog.jpg, I got one of those. And it goes and fetches it from its folder and says, all right, here you go, and brings it back up, and the visitor is then served your dog.jpg. Now, what a service worker does is it allows you to go in between it allows you to intercept the request between the visitor and the actual server, and it will allow you to jump in and do things like served up cached versions of a website. It allows you to, you could run a preprocessor there. You could do anything you want. So what happens is that you have a service worker in between. And so the visitor then goes to your website and requests dog.jpg, or it requests like people.json or something like that. And if that visitor has then um, already requested that, what can happen is that the service worker can jump in between before it hits your server and say, oh, let me immediately send that data back. And that's what allows us to have offline websites in the browser where the service worker will serve up all that data. And there's some other stuff around push notifications and background sync and whatnot. But the important thing is that the service worker is able to jump in at a point before the request even hits your server. And if it can do some work, it could do something like this. Let's go back to dog.jpg. And it'll say, okay, dog.jpg visitor is asking for it. Service worker, oh, I actually have that. And then it just sends it right back to the visitor. Your server was never aware of anything happening there. And it will just send it on back. So Cloudflare Workers is attempting to do the same thing, but for serverless functions, meaning that, let's go back to my thing here. The idea is that if somebody goes to, let's say, visitor and server, this is Cloudapp, and this is Wes. If I go to this URL right here, what is going to happen is if they go to / just the regular URL, I am going to be in the middle here, and I'm going to intercept every single request. And I'm going to say, if it is just a regular URL, then just forward that down to the server. Cloudapp will take care of it, and it will send it back to the visitor. However, I'm going to now check if there is a / content on the URL, and the worker is going to intercept that and say, okay, now I need to do some work. I need to fetch whatever the URL is of that thing, download it, and then serve it up from there. So this is my first time using it, but as far as I understand, that is one of the features that you can do. You can build a Slack bot. They've got some really cool, you can do redirects. You can send raw HTML. If you wanted to replace every instance of cloud with but on a website, you could absolutely do that here. It's just being able to run a Node.js script in between a request and either send data back that has been modified or send back the original one. So that is what I've been working on. And so I opened it up here. Get out of here, Dropbox. And it's so cool because, like, let me show you how it works. So the first thing that you do here is that you add an event listener for the fetch request. And what that means is not like when somebody writes a fetch request in their JavaScript, but this means whenever anybody makes a request to your server, I'm running it on the subdomain right now, then go ahead and respond with, and then we are going to write a handler for that. And then here, what happens is that we get in that request and we have to determine what to send back from the URL. So what we could do simply right here is simply just, I got a little example here. We could return a response that says hello worker with a plain type. So whatever URL somebody goes to, simply just return the text hello worker, right? Or we could put some backticks in here and say, you are trying to visit, and we could interpolate the request.url. And say, hello worker, you are trying to visit cloudapp.fix, blah, 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 / content. And if I were to change this to dogs, and then you could see that it's just responding back. And that's probably very familiar to you if you've ever built like an Express application where you get in a request and you send something on back. So what I did is you can use external node modules in these workers, but I wanted to keep it with no dependencies, just to keep it nice and fast. And it really wasn't all that necessary. So first thing that I did is I took the URL and I split it into the different parts. And you can just we just console.log the different parts. And let's get rid of this dogs here. And look at, they got that little node or Chrome console in here. This is really cool because this code editor right here is the base of what VS Code runs on. So it's not one of those crappy online editors. It's actually pretty good. This is a URL, like sign up. This is like Postman. And then you can also just preview what happens. So that's pretty cool. And then you've got your dev tools here, which I'm using Firefox, but it's just the Chrome dev tools that they've stuck in here. Now, when I visit the URL, let's go ahead and preview it. You'll see that I split the URL into these different parts. And I am looking if somebody has the content in here. So I'm saying if there's not 5 parts and the fifth part doesn't include content, then just go ahead and redirect them to the regular Cloudapp website, or just render it out. So if I remove that, you'll see that, look at this, this just renders out the regular Cloudapp website, which is what I want in most cases. It's only when somebody tacks a / content onto the end that I need to jump in and intercept that request. So if that is the case, I say this is an image request. I'm just logging out the URL. We log out the URL that the person is trying to visit. Now, here's where it gets a little bit hairy. I could have installed like Cheerio or any other DOM parsing library. This is running in a serverless function, which is basically just a Node.js script. And it's got some extra stuff on some APIs added for fetching. There's some APIs for rewriting URLs, which is kind of cool. But there's no API for creating or parsing HTML because it's server side JavaScript, right? So there's not like I could create a new one. So what a lot of people have used is that Cheerio package, which allows you to take HTML and parse it into it. But I've just done some cowboy pop split, whatever. So what we do here is we go ahead and then fetch the URL of the original drop. So if the URL is / the ID / content, I just fetch the URL of the regular drop, which is this. And what we get in response is the HTML. So we can just console.log the drop HTML. And you'll see that this is just the HTML of this page, right? So if you look in here, they've got the HTML, and somewhere in here, we need to find the absolute path to the image that has been hosted. And the easiest way I found that is by using the Open Graph meta tags here. I found the OG image secure URL will link me right to that actual resource. If I open that up in a new browser, you'll see that it actually gives me the raw full-size image, which is exactly what I want. So we go ahead and fetch the HTML for that page. And then what I do is I split it on a new line, meaning that I just take all of the HTML and I make an array of every single line being an item in the array. And then I find the line that includes OG image secure URL. This is getting a little bit cowboy. I would much like to use like document.querySelector here, but that doesn't exist unless I want to load in external dependencies. So this works totally fine for me until it breaks. Then I got to do something else. Then I take the, let's console log what that is at this point. So console.log the drop open graph image. That gives us this. So it's a string. Let me run it one more time. There we go. It gives us a string with the content in there. Now I need to parse out this tag here and get the contents of the content attribute. So that's what we'll do now. What I do is I split it on a single quotation mark. So if I console log, drop parts. There we go. Now we got an array of just different pieces. Then I find the index of content equals, and then I grab whatever the next thing is, and that works out really nicely. So find where the index of the content equals, then the image path is going to be equal to whatever was next to it. And I probably should put some error handling in here just in case it's like a not an image, like maybe it's a MP4 or something like that. I'm sure I'll run into little issues like that. But now you see, look, now I'm logging out this URL here, which is the direct URL. And then the last thing that I do is I go ahead and run a new request that will download that image and then serve up the result to the Cloudflare worker, which is as simple as just returning the fetch promise with the image path, and it will figure it all out from there. So now when I go ahead and save and deploy this thing, I can go to my URL like I was before, and it serves up the raw image. I can go to a single drop URL, and it will just serve up the regular Cloudapp interface that I am used to. So that's pretty cool. The last thing I haven't figured out yet is how do I take it off of this temporary domain, because like it's cloudappfix.westboss.workers.dev, and how do I stick that on my DNS, like after DNS resolution, but before it pushes it to Cloudflare. Like let's do a little thing here. So like I've got west.io, which has a DNS resolution. That then points to cloudapp.io. But what I want to do is I want to get in before this DNS resolution, and I want to jump in and run this script. I'm not sure if that's possible with this Cloudflare Workers or not. I'm going to pause it here and take a little look into it. I did see someone on Twitter said we use Cloudflare Workers to prevent card information from coming into our domain. Data is tokenized in the worker. Pretty handy. So that's so cool, is if you sent your card address, like 4242424242424242, you could have a Cloudflare worker that would take that credit card number and then immediately tokenize that, meaning send it to Stripe or whatever your payment processor is. And then instead of you getting the text of a raw credit card number, it would give you the card number, or the payment token. I don't know, payment underscore ABC123. That would be super cool, because then you don't have to worry about compliance of having data even in your logs, because you're stopping that data one step before it will ever even hit your server. I'm back. I got it to work. Awesome. Shout out to Christian. He's at Signal Nerve on Twitter. He works for Cloudflare, and he helped me out with a bunch of questions I had about how to get this working. So I'm going to show you how I got it working. So first thing you can do is just go into your workers, and you can add in a new route. Now, you can assign workers to only trigger on like subfolders, which is really cool. But the problem is that the route matching is not like a regex or something like that. It's just stars that can go at the start and the end of a domain name. So if I had like west.io/shares/whatever, then I could do that. But because the URLs are here, I've got them right here. The URLs are random IDs. There's nothing to like match just this right here, which sucks. So the route that we had to go, hey, there we go. The route we had to go was just send everything through our worker, which is exactly what we've been doing this whole time. The downside to that is you only get 100,000 a day, but like I'm never gonna hit that. I don't think. Well, maybe, because like I load up this page, and this page has let's see, network refresh 50, holy shoot, yeah, 70 requests. So when someone loads this page, all 70 of those requests are going through. Are all 70 of them going through? Let's see here. Let's refresh. So all the ones that say west.io, all of those are going through mine, and they're counting towards my 100,000. It's like $5 a month for unlimited though. So, and I think that that works, yeah, across all of your domain names. So really not that bad. You also get key value storage. So if I hit that, that's good. I kind of doubt I will hit that. I don't get a ton of traffic to this domain name. So that's what I did. You set it up to the worker that you want. The way I tested that is I wrote another worker that was just like text. And then when you visited that, it just replied hello world. And then I switched it back to the Cloudapp fix one. The other thing I had to do is I went to SSL and I had to change this to full, because by default, the way flexible works is that the SSL is only between the browser and Cloudflare, and then the link between Cloudflare and Cloudapp was not SSL'd, and there was a redirect loop happening. You'll see that a lot with WordPress as well. So switch that over to full. And now when I go to /content, it links me directly to the URL. And I think if I key code, and I think if I go to a GitHub URL now, there we go. This was hosted on my westboss.com. I think if I go to my README and edit that, you see this was west.io /whatever/content.gif. That didn't work for the longest time, and along with 14,000 other URLs that Cloudapp broke when they upgraded their thing. So it's working, pretty cool. I just think like this is the first time I've ever been able to run code on a domain name that is not pointing at a service that I run. That's so cool, because like I remember when I was like 7 years old, I bought a domain name, and I didn't want to pay for hosting because it's too expensive. So I like emailed the host. I'm like, can I just put like one line of code on the website? And they're like, that's not how domain names work. You don't put code on your domain name. You have a domain name that points to something. And this is kind of that. This is kind of like putting code on your DNS provider. Oh, the other thing is that the overview, no, analytics, where is DNS? I had to make sure that this was orange clouded and not gray cloud. Otherwise, if you gray cloud it, it's DNS only, and it doesn't do any of the magic that Cloudflare does. So hopefully you enjoyed that. I'm excited to try this for some other stuff. There is a whole local development thing called Wrangler that you can test them locally and have a whole local development environment and deploy and everything. So you don't just have to use this whole interface that they have here. I'm excited to try that out as well. Thanks so much for tuning in. Catch you later.